The Cages of Ash. Part 1. The File Nobody Wanted. Read at 2:13 a.m., the sub-basement elevator beneath Langley opened to a floor that officially did not exist. No button marked it. No blueprint listed it. No one mentioned it unless they were drunk, dying, or both. The fluorescent lights flickered overhead with the tired attitude of federal property. The hallway smelled like cold concrete, coffee gone bitter, and old secrets sealed in metal cabinets. At the end of the corridor, a steel door hissed open. Agent Sera Vane walked in, wearing a black suit, a gray tee, and an expression that said she had already judged everyone in the building and found the bar low. Her hair was pinned up like she did not have time for elegance, which was unfortunate for the room because elegance kept happening anyway. She carried a paper cup of coffee in one hand and a classified file in the other, labeled Project Threshold Farm Restricted, Compartmental Subject, Non-Human Influence Patterns, Public Narrative Control. She tossed the file onto the conference table and sat without asking permission. 3 men and 1 woman in expensive government fatigue stared at her from across the room. The wall behind them was glass, but not reflective. That bothered her. People who design rooms like this either fear mirrors or know what they're for. Deputy Director Harlan Pike cleared his throat. He looked like a politician who'd been assembled from legal disclaimers. Agent Vane, thank you for coming. Sera took a sip of coffee and stared at him over the rim. I wasn't asked. Pike ignored that because men like him treated facts like weather. We have an anomaly event in Arizona. Civilian videos, livestock panic, grid fluctuations, mass hallucination reports. Tuesday, Sera said. Pike's jaw tightened. We believe the event may involve hostile occult vectors. Sera set down her coffee. You mean you blamed demons again? Silence. One of the analysts, a clean-cut guy who looked like he said copy that to his microwave, jumped in. With respect, Agent Vane, the symbology matches known infernal signatures. Sera turned to him. With respect, analyst whatever your name is, if you see a cage and only study the animal inside it, you're not doing analysis. You're doing propaganda. The woman at the table, Dr. Neha Rowe, hid a smile behind her tablet. Pike folded his hands. You were brought in because your unconventional assessments have been accurate. Say embarrassingly accurate. It burns cleaner. Pike slid a tablet across the table. Grainy footage played, a desert sky pulsing with geometric light, people screaming, a church bell ringing in the background, a man yelling, "They're demons! They're demons!" Then the camera whipped toward a dry wash where something tall moved through static haze. The frame distorted. A voice came through the speaker, low and layered, almost like 2 people speaking at once. We are not your enemy. The clip ended. Analyst Microwave leaned forward. That's mimicry. Classic manipulation. Sera didn't touch the tablet. No, that's legal language. Pike frowned. Legal language? Sera nodded toward the frozen frame. That was a declaration, not a threat. Whoever that is was trying to establish non-hostility on record before engagement. Microwave blinked. On record with who? Sera looked at him deadpan. Any court that still matters. The room went quiet in the way rooms do when truth walks in and doesn't wipe its feet. Pike exhaled slowly. We need you on site. Sera stood. Then stop wasting my time with demon folklore from the PR era. He stared at her. PR era? She picked up the file and tapped it once. You people built 40 years of black budget theology around a lie. Something caged non-human intelligences, redirected human ritual systems, and labeled the survivors evil so no one would listen if they tried to talk. Microwave scoffed. Aliens. Sera gave him a flat look. If it helps your little brain, call them aliens. If it helps your soul, call them wardens. Either way, they farm fear and scarcity like crops. Pike's voice sharpened. That's a serious allegation. Sera opened the door. You brought me in because I make serious allegations right before they become reports. She paused, looked back once. And send someone useful. If your best plan is panic and blame demons, I can do this with a janitor and a flare gun. By sunrise, Arizona looked like the end of a prayer. The desert outside Black Mesa shimmered under heat and bad intention. Military vehicles sat at the perimeter pretending they were there for communications maintenance. A local sheriff smoked behind one truck and watched the horizon like he'd seen enough to stop believing in normal. Sera stepped out of the SUV in aviators and boots, carrying a duffel bag in a mood. The sheriff squinted. They sent you? Sera looked around. I ask myself that every day. He snorted despite himself. Sheriff Thomas Reed. Agent Sera Vane. He looked her over, openly skeptical. No offense, Agent, but you don't look like the Apocalypse unit. Sera popped the trunk and pulled out a locked metal case the size of a violin coffin. No offense, Sheriff, but you smell like Marlboros in denial. We're both surviving stereotypes. Neha Rose stepped out of the passenger side, clutching field sensors and trying not to grin. Dr. Neha Rose, Systems Anthropology, she said. Reed stared. That's not a real job. Neha shrugged. It becomes real when the walls start humming. A soldier jogged over and handed Sera a tablet. Perimeter cams keep cutting out at the wash. We lost 2 drones. Shot down? Reed asked. The soldier swallowed. No, sir. They just stopped. Fell, like they forgot how to be machines. Sera's face didn't change, but her eyes sharpened. Field inversion, she muttered. Neha glanced at her. Same as Istanbul? Worse. This one's tuned. Reed frowned. Tuned for what? Sera looked toward the wash where the heat shimmered unnaturally, geometric ripples moving against the wind. Selective perception. Reed stared. You're gonna need to say that in normal people. Sera started walking. Something out there can decide what your brain is allowed to call real. Reed swore softly and followed. Great, he muttered. Mind control. Sera glanced back. No, mind management. More efficient, less paperwork. Part 2. The Witness in the Wash. The wash was a shallow cut through the desert, lined with brittle brush and rock that looked ordinary if you enjoyed lying to yourself. Sera stopped at the edge and set down the metal case. The air changed. Neha felt it first. There. The hairs on Reed's arms lifted. A faint smell rolled through the heat, not sulfur this time. Ozone, iron, burned sage. Sera crouched and opened the case. Inside were tools that looked like a priest and an engineer had split a custody agreement. Copper rods etched with sigils, fiber optic lines wound around obsidian spindles, tuning forks, saline vials, a compact projector, and a matte black sidearm. Reed hoped was a gun, and suspected was not. He stared. The hell is all that? Sera clipped a thin earpiece behind one ear. Evidence collection. That looks like a haunted radio. She handed him a small iron coin punched through the middle. Put this in your pocket. He didn't move. What does it do? Gives your panic something to focus on. Neha choked back a laugh. Sera placed 3 copper rods in a triangle and activated the projector. A lattice of dim blue lines hovered over the wash, mapping interference patterns. The lines bent, then bent again. Then formed a shape in empty air, a vertical oval, tall as a doorway. Reed stepped back. Nope. The oval darkened like ink dropped in sunlight. Something moved behind it. Not crawling, not lunging, waiting. Sera's voice stayed calm. This is Agent Sera Vane, unauthorized but employed. I'm recognizing sentience and declaring non-hostility. If communication is possible, this is your window. Neha whispered. You sound like you do this every week. Sera kept her eyes on the portal. I do paperwork every week. This is more fun. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the air inside the oval rippled, and a figure emerged halfway, as if reality itself was reluctant to let him through. He was tall, angular, and almost painfully elegant, dressed in something that looked like charred silk and old armor reimagined by memory. His skin carried a bronze-dark sheen that shifted with the light. Horns, yes, but not monstrous in the cartoon sense. They curved back like carved obsidian. His eyes were gold and exhausted. Reed's hand went to his gun. The figure looked at him and sighed. Please, he said, voice dry as winter leaves. If I intended to kill you, Sheriff, I would not begin with your posture. Nea's eyes widened. He's articulate. The figure turned to her. Madam, I was a mathematician before your species discovered organized tax fraud. Sera's mouth twitched. Reed looked offended on behalf of humanity. What are you? The figure straightened, then winced as if some invisible pressure pulled at his shoulders. Wrongly translated, he said, repeatedly slandered, currently caged. He looked at Sera, and very tired of being called a demon by men who worship extraction. Sera nodded once. Name. A pause, as if names had become expensive. Ahll Ben Kareth, he said, archive keeper of the lower fires, third witness to the binding wars. Reed muttered, that is not helping. Sera ignored him. You said caged. By who? Azael's gold eyes hardened, the ones you call aliens because your institutions cannot survive the word wardens. They arrived when your ancestors still knew how to listen. They found an open world and built a grid around it. Nea stepped closer, transfixed. A frequency prison. Azael nodded. A resource lattice. Emotion, labor, belief, conflict. Your kind produces a spectrum they refine. Fear is easiest, grief is rich. Worship is clean burning. Reed stared, stunned. You're telling me something built a system to farm us? Azael looked at him with genuine pity. Sheriff, your species built smaller versions of it all by yourselves. Sera crouched near the lattice projection, watching distortion spike around Azael's wrists. There were marks there, not chains, not exactly. Bands of light embedded under the skin, flickering with geometric symbols that made her eyes water if she focused too long. Control seals, she said. Azael's jaw flexed. Narrative anchors. They distort how we are perceived. We warn. You hear temptation. We resist. You hear rebellion. We heal. You call it possession if the wrong priest is in the room. Nea whispered, horrified. My God. Azael looked at her gently. Many names, same silence. Reed looked between them. If this is true, why now? Why show yourselves now? Azael's expression darkened, because the wardens are losing precision. The wash trembled. Every screen in the command vehicles behind them briefly glitched to white. Sera stood. Say that again. Azael glanced upward, listening to something none of them could hear. The cage is failing in sectors. Humans are noticing patterns, children especially. Artists, the grieving, the inconveniently honest. Sera half laughed under her breath. So the usual suspects. Azael gave her the first hint of a smile. Yes, your people who cannot be bought cheaply. Neha stepped in, urgent now. What do you need? Azael looked at Sera. An advocate. Reed barked a disbelieving laugh. You cross dimensions to hire a lawyer? Azael turned to him. No. We cross dimensions to hire someone your government ignores until the building catches fire. Sera took off her aviators. Smart. The cage corrects itself. That was when the gunfire started, not from the perimeter, from behind them. 3 black SUVs crested the ridge too fast, dust ripping behind them. No insignia, no plates. Men in tactical gear poured out, faces hidden, weapons raised with the confidence of people who'd done this before and filed it under containment. Reed swore. Those aren't mine. Sera already knew. She grabbed the matte black sidearm from her case and clicked a switch along the frame. It unfolded into something between a pistol and a tuning instrument. Warden proxies, she said. Human contract teams. Neha's voice shook. How can you tell? Sera fired once into the dirt. A pulse rang out, invisible but felt, and one of the tactical men staggered, clutching his helmet as hidden symbols briefly flared across the visor. Because normal mercs don't wear translation dampers. Reed drew down and shouted toward the ridge. Federal, drop your weapons! The tactical men opened fire. So much for etiquette. Bullets tore through brush and stone. The blue lattice around the wash shuddered. Azael recoiled as the bands in his wrists lit up, forcing him backward toward the portal. Do not let them collapse the gate, he shouted. They want me relabeled before I testify. Reed ducked behind a boulder. Testify to who? Azael's laugh was bitter and huge. To anyone left who still believes truth is admissible. Sera moved like she'd been waiting all morning for somebody to do something stupid. She slid behind cover, flipped a switch on her weapon, and fired a second pulse into a truck engine. The SUV died instantly, electronics coughing smoke. Nea crawled beside her, clutching sensors. There are harmonics in the gunfire. Of course there are. Sera reloaded a crystal cartridge. They're not trying to kill us first. They're trying to tune the field. Reed shouted from behind his rock. Can somebody explain the evil orchestra later and shoot now? Sera smirked despite herself. See? That's leadership. A tactical man advanced down the slope with a device strapped to his arm, projecting a lattice of white light toward the portal. Azael dropped to one knee, face contorting. Sera's eyes narrowed. That one. Reed popped up and fired twice. Missed once, hit shoulder once, the man spun but kept moving. Damn it! Sera stood in full view, calm as tax season. Every tactical muzzle turned toward her. Neha went pale. Sera! Sera looked bored. Hi, she called to the ridge. Quick question. Who taught you idiots to build suppression rigs with exposed phase cores? A beat. Then every helmet turned involuntarily toward the device. Sera fired. The phase core burst in a shower of blue-white sparks. The suppression lattice collapsed with a shriek that seemed to come from the sky itself. The wash erupted in a wave of heatless force, knocking men flat, blowing out windshields, and slamming Reed onto his back hard enough to make him reconsider every career choice he'd ever made. In the center of the blast, the portal widened. Ahll rose to full height. For one impossible second, they all saw him without the narrative anchors biting into perception. Not a horror. Not a caricature. Something ancient, wounded, disciplined, and furious. A being built for archives, oathwork, and fire that cleanses instead of consumes. The tactical team panicked. One of them screamed, "Demon!" Ahll looked at him with tired contempt. "Yes," he said. "That word has bought your employers a lot of silence." He raised one hand. The guns in the tactical team's grip glowed red-hot and dropped into the dust. No flesh burned. Just metal. Sera clocked that immediately. Precision. Restraint, not bloodlust. Useful. Then the sky changed. A tone rolled over the desert, low and mechanical, like a choir made of machines learning how to pray badly. Every device on Sera's belt lit up at once. Neha stared upward, face drained. "Sera." Above the wash, invisible lines became visible, a grid pattern flashing across the daylight for half a second. Huge. Planet-scale huge. Reed whispered, "What the hell is that?" Ahll's expression turned grim. The cage correcting itself. Sera looked from the sky to Ahll to the burning suppression rig. Decision time. The kind that gets people erased from payroll and remembered in rumors. She holstered her weapon, stepped into the wash, and extended her hand toward Ahll like she was closing a deal at the end of the world. "I can't promise trust," she said. "Humans are bad at it, and institutions are worse." Ahll looked at her hand. "Reasonable." Sera's jaw tightened. "But I can promise this. If they framed your kind to control the collective, I'll rip the story open." Reed pushed up on one elbow, dazed. "You're making an alliance with a demon in the desert." Sera glanced at him. "I'm making an alliance with a witness. Try to keep up." Neha, somehow smiling through the fear, whispered, "This is going to get us all killed." Sera finally gave a real grin, sharp and luminous and a little unhinged. "Only if we lose." Ahll took her hand. The instant they touched, Sera saw flashes that were not memory and not imagination. Ancient towers humming with living script, winged things bound in geometric cages beneath a false sky, human priests weeping as symbols were altered by men in shining masks, a courtroom of fire where no one was allowed to speak their true name, and a child somewhere in modern America drawing the same cage symbol over and over in crayon like a warning. Sera jerked back, breath hitched. Ahll studied her, suddenly very serious. "You saw the nursery marks." Sera's voice dropped. "They're tagging children?" Ahll's gold eyes sharpened with alarm. "No, they are searching for one." The desert wind died. Even the soldiers stopped moving. Sera felt that old familiar cold settle into her spine, the one that came right before the world got worse. "Who?" Ahll looked past her, toward the convoy, toward Washington, toward all the polished rooms where men mislabeled monsters and called it strategy. Then back to her. "You." Silence. Reed stared. Neha stared. Sera blinked once, slow, offended. "Seriously?" she said. "I hate destiny." Ahll's mouth twitched, almost a smile despite the catastrophe. "Yes," he said softly. "It appears destiny does not care." The grid flashed again overhead. Far away, every mirrored surface in the command vehicles cracked at the same time. And inside the fractured reflections, just for a heartbeat, Sera saw something looking back that was not her. Not human, not demon, smiling like it had found its missing piece.
Until next time, your Sea-Star Kiracy, channeled by 3611027, the Beautiful Whisperer. Our Sea-Star Devalan CO. Apply the news you can use.